Artists often start sketching aimlessly. I just want to draw this place. But without a clear purpose or motivation, the sketch feels empty, lacking the spark of events, conflict, or meaning. What if, before each sketch, you ask yourself a specific question? What do I want to say with this composition? What story hides behind this facade? Or what's the emotional zest of this street? Your sketch becomes a visual dialogue with yourself, every stroke an answer. Imagine standing before an old Roman street with a crumbling facade and modern graffiti. Ask yourself, how do past and present connect? Your sketch answers by splitting the scene. On the left, weathered plaster with rough patches. On the right, vibrant graffiti. Start with tempo. First, lay down the texture of the ruined wall, rough strokes, uneven marks. Then shift to the graffiti, smoother outlines, detailed lettering. Moving from the left edge of the paper to the right, you visually answer the decay of the past under the weight of modern voices. Add a passerby in the foreground, pausing to study the clash of styles, a human bridge between eras. Jot a note at the bottom, interwoven fates, antiquity meets modernity. It'll pull you back to your core idea every time you revisit the sketch. Before each sketch, ask a clear question about the scene's essence. Let your drawing be more than an image, a visual answer with emotional and meaningful depth. When sketching a complex scene, a plaza, a city block, a panorama, many get fixated on individual buildings, missing the hidden logic of streets, roads, or waterways that give a place its scale and character. Like an architect studying a city's master plan before designing a building, you can read the underlying structure of a landscape. This turns your sketch into more than just a picture. It becomes a cartographic exploration of a place's spirit and energy. Say you're in Venice, sketching a canal, a bridge, and buildings along the banks. Before diving into facades with arches and balustrades, think top-down, maybe recall a GPS view or satellite map. The canal curves in a semicircle, the bridge sits slightly left of its axis, and a street runs parallel to the water. When sketching on site, mentally lift yourself virtually above the scene. Outline the canal's oval shape, then build the buildings along it, and only after that add details like arches or stained glass. Imagine you're not just drawing a building model, but its context in the city's plan. Maybe a flag flutters behind you, marking a narrow alley. It's that flag that helps you pinpoint where the main square begins and ends. Before getting lost in building details, read the master plan. Trace the main flows of streets, waterways, or open spaces. This lets you capture the scene's hidden logic and bring it to life in your sketch. Sketches often turn into a collection of pretty pictures without context. They look nice but lack a story or plot to make them memorable. Tiny notes in the margins, date, place, mood, a short phrase, can transform a dull sketch into a living diary of impressions. Imagine sketching a panorama of a small Tuscan town. Instead of just writing view from the hill, add a couple of lines. May 8th, Milan, Milano Centrale. Sunrise. The smell of fresh-baked bread wafted from a bakery below. Narrow streets felt like a maze of old sagas. Or go more dramatic. I met a girl with a dog who suddenly started feeding pigeons, and they swarmed us. A moment when we became part of the street's theater. These brief notes breathe life into the sketch. When you flip through your sketchbook a year later, those words will pull you back not just to the visuals, but to the emotional vibe of the moment. Add short, vivid notes to your sketches. They tie the image to your emotions, making your sketchbook alive and unforgettable. Fear of looking unprofessional or being judged by passers-by often stops artists from sketching outdoors. Sure, drawing at home or in your room feels safer, but it's less vibrant. Sketching in public spaces, especially in extreme conditions like rain or a curious crowd, turns into a performance that not only sharpens your skills but builds confidence. Imagine you're in Rome, finding a cozy courtyard by a fountain. The sky starts to darken, and soon the first raindrops fall. Instead of hiding, you pop open an umbrella and pull out your sketchbook. People stop, watch, some even record videos. You lean into the attention, sketching the architecture up front, with passers-by dodging rain in the background. Each raindrop that streaks across your page adds a random stroke to your composition, especially if you're working with ink outlines. This performance in front of a crowd pushes you to draw faster, bolder, without overthinking. What if it turns out bad? Your sketch ends up more expressive, and you gain the confidence to draw right in the middle of a storm and a crowd. Draw it in public, even if it's raining. It turns sketching into a performance, boosts confidence, and makes your lines bolder. Sketches often feel sterile, clean outlines without soul, missing those accidental marks that add life and unexpected flair. What if you ditch watercolor and use your morning coffee? Uncontrolled splashes create spontaneous textures that practically beg you to draw bolder. Brew a strong espresso, let it cool, then use a brush or dropper to splash a few drops onto a sheet with ink sketches. The coffee stains spread, forming unexpected warm gray tones. Say you're sketching a Venetian palazzo facade. Those coffee splashes become aged plaster or weathered stone. Then, looking at these random hues, you can emphasize a shadow or add a stroke to highlight what the stains suggest. A jutting brick or a crack in the wall, plus coffee shade gives that special Italian warm palette, instantly evoking an old city vibe. Don't be afraid to splash coffee on your sketch. Let it mess up and create spontaneous textures. They give your work unique character and freedom. When sketching for too long, artists often drift into details, getting lost in textures and nuances, forgetting the overall composition. Imagine you've got exactly 2 minutes to capture the essence of a form, a tree's silhouette, a passerby, or a house facade. This tight time frame trains you to instantly pick out what matters most. Set a 2-minute timer and stand in front of a quaint old courtyard. When it starts, sketch fast. Quick lines for the silhouette of walls and roofs, something like this. The ticking timer turns you into a racer. Every second counts, no time for extra details. When the timer dings, you'll have a familiar architectural blueprint, everything you could catch in 2 minutes. Try it again with 5 minutes. You'll have time to sketch shadows behind ledges or add a few details to window frames. Then go for 10 minutes to work in brick texture or start shading stone. Compare all 3 sketches. They'll show how your sense of form sharpens under strict time limits. Set timers for 2, 5, and 10 minutes. These races against yourself hone your eye and teach you to focus on the essentials even under pressure. Hudosniki kasto stremotsa vizet visai srazu. Zapas meni karandasej, desatok razni markarov liner, akvarel penslik, kistaku dla tusi, v itoj oni tradat vrema vibra instrument a ne concentrirutsa na samam rasovani, gem mens v ruka, tem bystri rozdoutsa resenia stroha minimalistica materialov mozit udivitelno raskrepostat dopustum v barat li puro s cernoj tusu I odin serij marker bez zeltoi akvareli, bez karandasa tu v, bez specialnoj bemagi dla akvareli, vesa zadeka odnij lineage param nametat formu zadania, dobavit texturu strihami, a serum markaram zastrihovat teni, is bavivsis ot marsanala, v concentrirwatas na edenstunoj zadas. Sozdet ponatno, lakonikno izobrazny, cogda a narasoval v milane kupol duomo tolko param I markaram, polusilos ne mani virusitelno, gem pri ispolzavani kavetnoj akvareli, balay togo, kazda linea priobratala vase, ona ne taralas sredi sotni druga, ispolzuchta minimum instrumentov puro, tus odin marker. Taka zeska disciplina privodat k bystromu prinadiu resenij I razvivate spozobnost virazot formu bukvalno v odnam diva striha. Artists often dive into tiny architectural details right away: cornices, carved frames, intricate grills. They get lost in the details, forgetting the building's proportions and volume, drawing fragments in isolation without tying them to the big picture. Instead of tackling every column or frame, start with the closest blocks, like you're building a house from giant Legos: foundation, walls, roof. Then move to the decor. Picture a Gothic cathedral, complex facade, pointed arches, stained glass windows. Don't start by sketching every Gothic portal. First, capture the big blocks: a rectangle for the main wall, a triangle for the roof, 2 tall rectangles for the towers. Let your first strokes be bold geometric shapes. Once they're set on paper, check this tower is a 1/5 taller than the roof, or the stained glass window takes up a 1/3 of the main wall's width. Adjust as you go, filling in large volumes: the sky, the plaza in front, shadows under the eaves. Only when the house structure is solid should you tackle the carved arches and ornate windows. This hierarchy, from broad, simple forms to fine details, keeps perspective and proportions from going off the rails. Start by laying down blocks, big volumes and shapes. Only then work on details to make them fit seamlessly into the composition. Many start with careful outlines, meticulously measuring every line, but the drawing ends up losing its spark, looking dead without a lively rhythm. What if your first lines aren't perfect but bold and emotional? That kind of gesture sets the rhythm for the whole sketch and charges it with energy. Imagine sketching a dancer. Their pose already has vivid curves and dynamic movement. If you start with calm, measured outlines for the torso, then shoulders, then hips, the drawing loses its flow. Instead, lay down a few confident strokes capturing the spine's curve, the tilt of the shoulders, the arc of the legs. Your lines can overlap or be messy at first. That's okay. The goal is to catch the rhythm, letting the dancer's pose glide onto the paper. Once that skeleton is set, you can add details. Weigh down the feet, shape the muscles, refine clothing folds. By starting with impulse, not rigid outlines, the sketch instantly gains a pulse. Let yourself make that first wild stroke. It sets the life, energy, and rhythm for the whole composition. Sometimes, when drawing objects with outlines, your eyes miss the tiny gaps between them. As a result, two objects can merge into one, throwing off the whole scene. Instead of constantly comparing outlines, focus on the gaps and contact points, the so-called negative spaces. These empty shapes lighten the load on your perception. Imagine sketching a park. A bench sits next to a tree, with branches creating gaps that reveal the sky. Look at that patch of sky between the bench's backrest and the tree trunk. It has a distinct shape like a trapezoid or an irregular polygon. Don't start with the bench itself. Focus on that sky shape first. Sketch that gap on paper. This ensures the bench's edge and the tree's trunk stay balanced. Then move to other negative spaces. What's between the bench's right leg and the tree root, or what does the window of air above the backrest look like? Once these negative shapes are in place, drawing the objects themselves becomes way easier, and they won't blend together. Look at the spaces between objects, not just the objects themselves. This guarantees you won't collapse elements into one, and keeps your composition true. When you look closely, every object feels woven from tiny details, the texture of wood, reflections in glass, shadows between branches. Your eyes and brain get overwhelmed, diving into details and losing sight of the overall form. But squint, and suddenly you see only the essentials, big blocks of light and shadow, not every little crack. This trick is a lifesaver for capturing large shapes. Imagine standing before an old facade with bas-reliefs, columns, and carved frames. Squint, and the bas-reliefs turn into a dark silhouette against the light wall. Columns become wide, bright strips. Details fade away, leaving just bold patches of light and shadow. Sketch those patches on paper. First outline the dark shape of the bas-relief, then add a light patch for the column. Once the big shapes are down, open your eyes and add details, knowing the silhouettes and forms are already spot on. Squint to cut out extra details and focus on the main blocks of form. It speeds up your composition and keeps you from drowning in details. Many artists mess up scale when drawing a scene with multiple objects. One thing looks huge, another tiny. Without an anchor to compare sizes, the drawing loses believability. How do you keep the right scale without a ruler, especially when sketching outdoors? The trick is to pick an anchor object that everything else revolves around. For example, say you're drawing your workspace, a coffee cup, a laptop, and a book on the table. You decide the book is your anchor because it's easy to compare with other objects. Start by sketching the book's size, say 15 centimeters wide, 20 centimeters tall. On your paper, draw a rectangle matching that proportion. That's your anchor. Then look at the real table and note, from the book's edge to the laptop is about 1.5 book widths. On paper, mark that distance, 1.5 book widths to the right. Do the same for the cup. The cup's height is about 1/3 of the book's. Draw 1/3 of the anchor's height. This way, everything scales correctly and stays true to your eye. Choosing an anchor object turns size chaos into a clear system. Everything scales relative to it, and you won't lose proportions again. The most important thing, don't be afraid or chase perfection. Sketching is about practice, learning to see and express your thoughts quickly and clearly. Start simple. Grab a notebook and pencil, set aside 5 to 10 minutes a day. Draw what's around you, a cup, a window, a bit of the street, something interesting. Don't aim for beauty, focus on the idea and understanding. Over time, your sketches will get more expressive and you'll notice details you missed before. It'll change how you see the world and make drawing a joy, not a chore.